kind of set up the dialogue with some of those old videos. They're kind of highlights for me about people talking about their journey. And one of my goals is to build a guiding coalition for change for people that are in the audience. And we're socially distanced here because 60 of our friends decided to do it virtually. And we're going to basically communicate with them with passing notes back and forth and get the dialogue. And Alex back here is going to be doing our Twitter feed, and anyone that wants to jump on the Twitter feed, follow Supply Chain Insights Global Summit and its Supply Chain 2030 hashtag. And we designed this event for extreme networking. So Julie over here is going to be facilitating a visual representation of the dialogue. So throughout the entire event, she's going to be taking pictures, and for people that are on the online, we're going to be taking the still pictures and we're going to be pushing them up to the online so that they can see that. And when we get all done, you can take that home. And we designed the event for the content and also the fun. So the program is divided into sections where we're going to first imagine manufacturing 2030, right? If you think back 30 years ago, 40% of the U.S. economy had labor that actually worked in a manufacturing plant. Today, it's about half that, and in our recent study, the global manufacturer had on average 50 manufacturing sites, 27 outsourced manufacturing sites, and none of them have authoritative identifiers. We're going to talk about authoritative identifiers because we need authoritative identifiers to be able to build global networks. Additionally, we're talking about improvement, but how do we drive improvement across all of these manufacturing sites while driving standardization? Because we want quality of conformance and we want standardization, but we want improvement. And how do we drive that balance? So Bharat from Schneider is going to be talking about, do we need to make all the products that we make? Can we redesign the atoms and the electrons of the supply chain for digital manufacturing? Can we 3D print? Do we need products or do we need services? And Tally from Xerox is going to tell us where are we at with 3D printing? What's possible, and how do we think about rewiring our brain to say, maybe we don't need inventory? And Jane Kaiser from Bayer is going to talk about how do we manage a horticulture and seed innovation and product conformance. And then we'll come back and we'll ideate on the tables with some questions based upon what you heard. We'll finish manufacturing, and tomorrow we'll talk about redefining supply chain excellence. And supply chain excellence is based off the Supply Chain Index and the Supply Chain Sid Meier, and I'll have a conversation with Peter Rolsdorf about 2014. We started to see a real inflection in performance of industry sectors. And what happened is the industry sectors started to tank on inventory effectiveness and operating margin. What happened was we benchmarked against other companies in that sector, so we went down, down, down together. So we're going to talk about how do we pull up, up, up together by reinventing. And then we're going to think about reinventing work. So I invited Allison to come and talk about the role of a demand planner. Allison worked at Campbell's, she worked at Mars. I worked with her on multiple implementations of demand management, demand sensing. And she's going to talk about how people don't use the forecast and that forecasting has become more. How do we embrace demand in a different way? And unfortunately, if you look at supply chain satisfaction, the demand planner has the lowest level of satisfaction. And it's because they're kind of kicked around like a can down the street. And we're going to talk about redefining work and can we democratize planning? So if we look at the supply chain digital twin, could we make planning a back office activity for everyone, not just the 3% of people that are planners? And we're going to think about new forms of analytics. We're going to talk about NoSQL and unified data model and rules-based ontologies and rules and policies and how they tie to engines And how do we do a step change in analytics? And we'll talk about what does that mean for 2030. And then the last day, we're going to talk about transportation. I invited the person that runs the Real Women in Trucking. She's a trucker, and she's going to talk about why Walmart was rated the poorest shipper in the world, and why most companies don't think about the role of a shipper and how to make it better for a driver. We're really facing a driver shortage of 20 to 30%, and she's going to talk about how do we train drivers and how do we become better shippers. And I'm going to push that today what we're doing is we're only focused on transportation price. We're not focused on reliability. Our TMS optimization or transportation optimization and distribution optimization are different models. They don't align. We're not set up for the variability and the lack of reliability. And then we'll end the program with Daryl Edwards to talk about leadership. And along the way, I'll bring back tidbits of past case studies, research, and I want us to have fun. But we want to be COVID smart, right? We're going to ask you to mask up. Thanks for all the people with the mask on. Regina made sure everyone in the room is vaccinated, so we got a vaccination card. Some of the ones from Africa and India were quite interesting. There's a whole study about what do vaccination cards look like around the world. But don't take any chances. We want everybody to be safe. And I don't want you to think about this as a conference. I want you to think about this as a facilitated workshop. Your table assignments on the back of your badges are for you to have great conversations. I want to build a guiding coalition. I want you to challenge the way we currently do work. And I want you to leave the door with friendships and networks that you haven't had before. So on the back of your badge, you have numbers. This is Regina's badge, right? She used to be at table 4, and then table 5, and then table 8, and then table 3. So when you come through the door, just change tables, and it's designed for a purpose that each of the tables is a different group for you to have a great conversation with. And, people fill out the form and just leave it in the basket. And our goal is to strike the balance between, some people say, mind-numbing content, but we try to really drive it, to the edge, along with some fun. So we've got trivia games, we got the trivia PowerPoints, we got the women's networking dinner tonight, which is always great to see the number of women that come to this conference. We got the Wednesday night line dancing. I hear Philip was wearing his boots, and I want to see him on the dance floor. And then we've got the Thursday morning fun run at 7 o'clock. And then we'll be drawing our conversation on the wall. So we want to have the right balance of content. And tomorrow you'll leave with John, which is a compilation of all of the writing that I've done for the last year. If you're online, we'll drop a link. And if you want a hard copy book that's signed, just let us know, and Regina will be glad to send that to you. So let's get started. That trivia quiz I gave you was quite tough, right? It was tough for a reason, and it had a variety of topics for a reason. Corporate social responsibility, global change, what's happening in government and trade relations, what's happening with product proliferation. We're trying to have fun, but really supply chains are really key to saving the planet and growing economies. So I want to congratulate the first place winner on the trivia contest is Laurie. And Laurie is a great supply chain leader. He used to be at Schneider. He's now with Alstom. And he's somewhere in Europe smiling because Regina is going to be sending him a book on how do you ask great questions. And the book is given to us by Swarm Engineering, and it's a great book. And if you want to see it, Regina's got some copies. And the second place winner went to our friend from Dow, and he scored a little less than Laurie, but both of them did significantly better than the rest of the group. And we will publish all the results of the trivia as we go along. Let's think about this thing called manufacturing. I grew up in manufacturing. I still have bunions on my feet from the safety shoes. And let's look at organizational alignment. Because one of the gaps that we have today is organizations are not aligned. And the term supply chain means something very different as you move from company to company. 32% of supply chain organizations report through a manufacturing organization. Conversely, 45% of manufacturing will report through supply chain. But what's happened in the last decade is there is a larger gap between procurement and manufacturing. Procurement has become more efficient, very focused on RFPs, very focused on lowest cost. But the gap between procurement and manufacturing has grown, and it's quite painful right now because we haven't figured out how to give the best signals to suppliers, and we're dealing with a lot of shortages. Also, the gap grew, and the largest growth in the gap was systems, often called ERP. Our IT strategies became very vested in what I call the black and white, the transactional systems. But unfortunately, the world became more gray. We had more variability. And the number one issue for companies is, how do I get visibility? How do I get visibility to those 50 factories and those 27 outsourced manufacturing facilities? How do I get the variability for the on-time delivery for the factory? And so in this world of gray, alignment is extremely important. Alignment issues grew over the last decade, and they're an opportunity for us. But let's think about corporate social responsibility. Headline news today is the semiconductor issue, right? And the semiconductor issue started with many, many factors. But if you look at the drought that we had in Taiwan, it was extremely detrimental to TSMC in building the chips. 10% of the reservoirs at TSMC were looking like this. There wasn't water. So they actually had to truck in water. So as we think about sustainable manufacturing, and we think about the fact that it's so important to global economies, we have to think about global sustainability. And this is actually a great case study from Schneider. Now, I want to talk a little bit about Schneider Electric before I invite Bharat to the stage. Schneider is an example of digital manufacturing that is the most advanced of anybody I know in the world. And digital manufacturing means very different things to different people, and Industry 4.0 means very different things to different people. But I want you to listen to a couple of pieces in Bharat's presentation. One is, I want you to hear how he drove organizational adoption. Second, I want you to listen to the tension between standardization and improvement, and how did Schneider drive that? And remember, Schneider, a decade ago, had 110 different ERP systems and really has always struggled with disparate data. Hands-free manufacturing. How did Bharat do that? So we're going to have Bharat speak for 30 minutes, and then we're going to have some Q&A. Rick's going to pass the mics, and we're going to be sure we wipe them all off so that we're COVID-friendly. So let's welcome Bharat to the stage. Bharat?